Sister Celeste with the Coalition
Sister?
Hotel Motel Hub.
Very nice to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you, man.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. You camera people ready to go? I tell you what, before we begin, let me just tell you that we obviously have a good-sized group here today. Each and every one of them knows more about all of this than I do. Each and every one of them, I think, are going to say a few words, hopefully. And let me just say a couple of things, and then I'll introduce the people who will be speaking and tell you who they're with and what they know about, so that you have a chance to direct your questions to the person who's likely to know most. Let me just say thank you, first of all, for being here today. This is not a good problem to have, this whole trafficking thing that we're talking about, obviously. And so the city wants to be a part of trying to do something about it. And I'm pleased to announce that we're joining today the Coalition on Human Trafficking in their very worthy initiative to stop human trafficking by working with hotels to identify trafficking signs. Obviously, in this instance, we're talking about sex trafficking for the most part. Am I correct? Mm-hmm. But human trafficking goes into slavery in different forms, as I understand it. Hotels, motels are commonly utilized for human trafficking without the knowledge of how to positively identify a potential trafficking situations. Victims will continue to be transported from hotel to hotel and city to city. And in case you're wondering, I am informed, and you will know and hear from our law enforcement people that indeed trafficking occurs everywhere, and it occurs in this city. The Coalition's project will assist local hotel staff to realize, to recognize, and to respond to human trafficking. Staff will be educated on the signs of human trafficking and how to respond and how to inform law enforcement. In the near future, local hotel managers will receive a letter from me asking them to participate in this program. No hotel is too large or too small. We don't want this crime committed anywhere in our city, and I am strongly encouraging hotel managers to take advantage of this training. So, with me today to tell you more about it and to spread the word about the program is, first of all, my longtime friend, Senator Pansing Brooks, who has been already instrumental in getting trafficking penalties strengthened in the legislature. I think it was just this year, wasn't it? Yeah. Sister Celeste Wobiter, did I pronounce it right?
Very good, thank you.
All right. Is here from the Coalition and will further explain the project itself. Megan Malik is the trafficking project manager. Did I get that right? Mm-hmm. From the Women's Fund of Omaha, and has some trafficking data that you may be interested in. Our police chief, Jeff Bleimeister, and the Lancaster County Sheriff, Terry Wagner, are both here and will hopefully add some words of support for the program. Glenn Parks is the coordinator for the Nebraska Human Trafficking Task Force. He'll explain the task force work and the alliance with the Coalition. And finally, Lucas Arias, president of the Lincoln Lodging Association, will likewise is here to encourage local hotels to participate in the program and be a part of the solution. So, with that, Sister Celeste, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you, Mayor Blyder. As the mayor said, I'm a member of the Coalition on Human Trafficking, and I chair the Hotel Motel Project. That's a part of the coalition. Our coalition is a faith-based organization with a mission to eradicate human trafficking through education, legislation, providing services for victims and survivors, and the Hotel Motel Project, which is kind of our mission today. The goal of our Hotel Motel Committee is to train employees of all hotels and motels in a 50-mile radius of Omaha. And we have trained in close to about 100 hotels and motels in the Omaha Council Bluffs area, and are now moving here to Lincoln, and are just really, really grateful to the mayor and police department, sheriff, all the hospitality and everyone that is in leadership in this community who are welcoming us to do this training in the hotels and motels. I'd like to recognize one of our volunteers who is a UNL student, Turner Eakin, who is over here. He has already done a training here in Lincoln, and we are very pleased to have a student involved in the project, and we need a lot more volunteers. Our training focuses on 3 areas that are here on our banner: to realize, to recognize, and to respond to the signs of human trafficking. So I'm just going to speak a little bit about each of those 3. First of all, we need to realize this is going on. We've got to wake up and open our eyes, take off our blinders, and shake off denial that sex trafficking is happening here in hotels and motels in Lincoln and surrounding towns. Unfortunately, it's a worldwide crime, and it's here. Studies indicate that over 75% of sex trafficking happens in hotels and motels. And today, right now, there are women and girls here in hotels and motels in Lincoln and beyond who are being exploited sexually. Lunch break is a few hours away, and numbers spike during lunch break. It's a good time for the buyer to set up an appointment. The wife won't know, the boss won't know, and when I first heard this, I was just so shocked that this is going on during lunch breaks. And it's very alarming, and certainly it's a disgusting reality. Sex trafficking really increases when there are major events. And Lincoln has a lot of great major events, our football teams, concerts, and just many, many events that draw a crowd. And it's not the events that cause sex trafficking. It's that when there are lots of folks coming in from other communities and they are unknown perhaps and have a little extra money. So it's a great opportunity for pimps to make a major profit by selling girls for sex and setting up appointments in hotels and motels and elsewhere. So to realize, we got to wake up, we've got to be alert, we have to have our eyes open. Then once we realize, then it's like, okay, how do we recognize the signs of trafficking? And that's one of the things we do in our training, is to indicate what are some of the signs that the employees can observe. And employees, we mean front desk, maintenance, managers, housekeeping. Housekeeping is really key. Anyone on staff, restaurant staff, anyone on staff, to recognize the signs and then to know how to respond. And that's the 3rd step. First, we realize it's happening, then we recognize the signs, and then the next step is how do we respond? And we'd encourage people, when there's immediate danger, to call 911. If it's not immediate danger, then to call the Human Trafficking National Hotline number, which is 888-3737-888. And they will contact a local person here that will do the investigation and check out what's happening. So our goal then, again, is realize, recognize, and respond to sex trafficking. It's a major, major issue, and it's so rampant everywhere. However, if we can all work together as we are now, we can bring hope and an end to this. And before I end, I'd like to introduce Kathy Kemmler here. She's the coordinator of our Hotel Motel project, and Kathy's always looking for volunteers. So if there's anyone who would like to volunteer to be a trainer, see her after this session. And our next speaker is Megan Malik, who works with the Women's Fund of Omaha, as the mayor said, and she's a trafficking project manager. And our coalition's really very grateful to the Women's Fund for their financial and ongoing support in many ways. So Megan.
Thank you, Sister Celeste, and thank you to everybody for being here this morning and for the mayor for hosting us and allowing us to really tackle this issue in Lincoln. We are pleased to be here in support of the work being done in the Lincoln community to create awareness, provide education, and reduce trafficking. The mission of the Women's Fund is to examine issues and conduct research to provide informed support for initiatives that improve the lives of women and girls. We are committed to a comprehensive approach to ending sex trafficking, including strengthening survivor leadership, enhancing service providers' capacity, and increasing education and awareness, and changing policies and practices. Sex trafficking is happening in our communities. No neighborhood or zip code is immune. And sex trafficking not only happens in our backyards, but it happens with the click of a smartphone. Nebraska is embedded in a regional trafficking network, largely defined by I-80 and I-29. These interstates also facilitate national movement. We partner with Creighton Human Trafficking's initiative, which provides research and data on this issue. Through this research, we know that Nebraska has 5 backpage sites, much like Craigslist, where you can buy and sell human beings. And it accounts for about 80% of the online commercial sex market. Lincoln is one of those cities listed. Lincoln averages around 200 unique individuals bought and sold for the sex in a 30-day period. 200 individuals in 30 days. From the research, we know that 70 to 75% of those sold for sex online, often multiple times, show some indicator of sex trafficking. It's also important to note that not only women and girls are trafficked, but men and boys. Individuals of all genders are trafficked and of all ages can be trafficked. We also know that when major events are hosted by a city, there is a drastic increase in the occurrence of trafficking. So we must be vigilant to know the signs. The Women's Fund has a strong partnership with the Coalition on Human Trafficking, who provides critical role in raising awareness and also educating the Hospitality Association and providers, an important part of the solution as a large portion of sex trafficking does occur in hotels. We hope hotels and volunteers in the Lincoln area go to www.notrafficking.org today and volunteer to either have your hotel trained or volunteer to educate individuals on the signs of human trafficking. Lincoln leaders, service providers, and law enforcement are already doing some amazing work to fight this issue. I am honored to work with these partners as we take a stand to end sex trafficking in Nebraska, because it really will take every one of us working together. We can no longer ignore this issue. I want to take just a second and point out some really important people that are also in the audience today. The director of our Child Advocacy Center locally in Lincoln, Lynn Ayers, has been fighting this issue for a long time and really taking a stand against child abuse, child sexual abuse, and child sex trafficking. Ivy Bloom, who works for the Department of Health and Human Services, Children and Family Services, really has provided leadership within that department to create the response for youth who are sex trafficked, and we're really fortunate to have her. And Shriyani, welcome back. I thought you were still gone. Shriyani Tidball, professor at UNL, who has also been fighting this issue and researching, providing research, local research on this issue for a long time. So we're really fortunate to have these leaders here with us today, as well as these important leaders. And I am so pleased that I get to introduce Senator Pansing Brooks today, who I have felt really grateful to stand alongside and to support. For the past 2 years, she has been leading the fight legislatively against sex trafficking and has seen some really critical legislation being passed. And I want to just tell a quick story. I was in Nashville a month ago, and I was talking to a judge about things that needed to still be done in Nebraska. And she said, you know, you can look at it legislatively, but it'll take, 3-5 years to probably get it passed. And I said, no way. Not in Nebraska. We are serious about this, and we have a senator leading this charge. And then I told her about the bill that we got passed in 1 year, and she said, can I come to Nebraska? So it is my pleasure to introduce Senator Pansy Brooks.
Thank you. Well, thank you. I'm so honored to be here and so honored to be in this group of people who are so passionate about such a despicable problem in our society. I'm so grateful that the mayor has taken this on as a mission, that the hotel and motel industry is willing to stand up and take a fight. This really is an indicator of something that does take a village. And the fact that law enforcement is involved here, and of course, the Women's Fund has been integral to this entire fight. The fact that they've been willing to raise money and raise awareness and work with the Attorney General's office has really been integral to this whole battle. It really has been a sea change of understanding in Nebraska. And that's what's been so important about it, is that we have got to understand that trafficking exists here, that it is a despicable industry. It is second only to the in crime to the drug trade. And the thing that makes it more despicable is that it is a reusable commodity because it's the sale of human flesh. So when you think about it in those terms, and then you think about the fact that the first time that a person is first commercially sold for sex and trafficked is age 13. Think of that. The first time that someone is first commercially trafficked is 13. That is something that we need to rise up and say no more. So I have been moved by the research by Professor Tidball and her partner at the university, Dr. Rajaram, who created an incredible study, the people at Creighton who created information in a study so that we could understand this better and understand the true damage that's happening to our children and our young people in our communities. 2 years ago, what I felt compelled to do was to help people understand that we have been treating the victim as a criminal. We have been treating those who are trafficked as criminals and charging them with prostitution. For my bill, I had a person who'd been trafficked come and testify that she had been arrested 156 times, and that her trafficker had never been arrested, and that the purchasers also had never been arrested to her knowledge. And I like to use the words trafficker and purchaser because that seems more real in our society than pimp and John. I think it's more likely that we would know a trafficker or a purchaser than the fact that we might know a pimp or a John. And I do believe that we may know these people in our own community. And so this is a sea change where we have to say no more. And I'm so grateful because the Attorney General, Doug Peterson, worked so hard to go out across the state and help inform law enforcement about what is going on and to start helping them realize this is not the good old boy system of just somebody out having fun. One thing that was really important for people to remember in the legislature was that people were confused about prostitution versus trafficking. Prostitution is a consensual act, and trafficking is not. It's a terrible act with abuse and trauma, and these people are actually not in control of their housing, their money. It's a totally different act. And when I was talking to the attorney up in Omaha about this, the county attorney in Omaha said, I asked him, what % of the time do you think those who are trafficked are really prostitutes versus being trafficked? And he said 96 to 98% of the time the people that we arrest are actually trafficked. Think of that. So this is a terrible industry. It's so important that all of these wonderful people are involved. Again, I'm so grateful that Sheriff Wagner's here. We have Glenn Parks from the AG's office, and again, we have to stand up and say no more. This is not appropriate in Nebraska. People are probably not as aware of it because before we started looking at it as a state crime, it was a federal crime. And the problem was it was difficult when they finally, to arrest somebody, they had to take 1 or 2 girls across state lines. Well, at that point, the FBI isn't going to rise up and alert about the fact that 1 or 2 young people are being taken across state lines. They've got a lot of other things going on. So that's why it's so important that the state and now the city they are working together and working to say no more, and that the hotels come forward and help recognize this whole industry and recognize that we cannot allow this to happen. And it's going to take a few major arrests, and I think people that we probably know will be arrested. That's what happened with the Mothers Against Drunk Drivers that stopped that drunk driving back in the 60s and 70s. And the same kind of thing is going to happen here. And I'm just so grateful to everybody, to the mayor for his continuing vision on so many things, but on this in particular. Thank you, Mayor. And again, I want to thank Chief Bleimeister. I get to introduce him. He is a treasure in our community. He cares so much about our people. His leadership is clear. As far as law enforcement in our community, he is an incredible example for not only law enforcement, but for the young people in our community to be able to look up at somebody who cares about them. And it's clear when you talk to this man how fortunate we are in Lincoln to have him leading our law enforcement. So it's my honor to introduce Chief Bleimeister. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning. I want to start by saying human trafficking occurs in our community. And the educational campaign that is being talked about here today is just another great example of the positives that can occur. We have great lines of communication with our hotel and motel networks. And this will only expand that lines of communication where they are going to notify law enforcement or in not an immediate response needed, the human trafficking network, that problems are occurring. And so thank you for taking the time and organizing the volunteers, including the students at the University of Nebraska. And I can't remember, you're associated with a particular fraternity. SIGEP. Okay. Taking ownership and responsibility of the safety and security of our crew, of our community. And to all of you, look at the media outlets that are here today. I talk about this all the time, where across the nation, there's often this consternation between law enforcement and the media, but not here, because we're together to talk about what is needed in this community and what can make it better. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to Sheriff Terry Wagner.
Well, thanks, Chief. Senator Pansing Brooks kind of hit the nail on the head. Mothers Against Drunk Driving changed the national culture and the societal norms about drunk driving. The same thing happened when meth labs were a huge issue in Nebraska. It was the educational component along with the enforcement component. So sex trafficking is much the same in the strategy that we need to employ, and that is to combine enforcement efforts with the educational component so that the citizens know the scope of the issue, and so that they can focus appropriately on what is happening with sex trafficking. So from that standpoint, this is sort of the groundswell of a societal change in how we think about prostitution, sex trafficking, and how we can affect that change. So while we don't have any hotels and motels in Lancaster County outside the city of Lincoln, there are businesses that do employ women that could potentially be sex trafficked, and so it's something we all need to be aware of and keep the educational components in the forefront of our minds, of our officers' minds, so that when they're investigating a case, when they're stopping cars on the interstate, that these issues are in their mind and they can take appropriate action. So with that, thank you all for being here. I appreciate it, and I'm pleased to introduce Glenn Parks with the Attorney General's Office. He's a coordinator for the Nebraska Sex Trafficking task force. So, thanks, Glenn.
Well, I actually just want to be here to thank Kathy and Sister Celeste and everybody involved in this the hotel motel project. The task force that I'm coordinating, we're trying to coordinate law enforcement and victim services across the state. We're trying to think of this comprehensively. What are everything we can do? We have organized in some ways, but everything we want to do, catch the traffickers, get these victims out and get them services, stop this, has to start with finding out where they are. We can coordinate all we want, but unless we know where these victims are and where the traffickers are operating, there's not a whole lot we can do. And so one thing that we really have to do, and it's been mentioned already, is to be able to realize it's happening and recognize. And I love this project. I really love it because a lot, as has been said, probably a majority of the human trafficking that happens in Nebraska is sex trafficking. A lot of that, probably a majority of that, happens in hotels. There are some obvious signs that we can all imagine. There are some non-obvious signs that the coalition knows about and can train hotels on to tell these signs. And that's the moment, that's one of the rare times when the public can see what's going on and alert authorities and actually start to do something about this and sort of trigger all that organization we're doing. And so I really appreciate that. Another thing I want to say is I go across the state talking to lots of people about these things, and a lot of times they say, what can I do to help? And I think this is an excellent example because Kathy would tell me you don't have to be a sworn officer of the law, you don't have to be a nurse or a trained counselor, and yet you have to invest a lot of time. You have to have a teacher's heart, probably that helps because you're informing hotel staff. But I think this is a great way that people who want to get involved and plug in can do so. And again, I want to give a shout out to the university and the fraternity house. A friend of mine and a colleague of mine went and spoke about human trafficking. And as it's not a secret, they're known to be part of the problem. And I love it that these guys are standing up and saying, no, we're going to change that narrative. We're going to stand up. We're going to start training these hotels what to look for so we can stop this in its tracks. So I'm very honored to be a part of that. You guys are a part of the task force and all these people here. I'm really honored to be a part of it. I just want to celebrate what you guys are doing. And now I get to introduce Lucas Arias. He is the president of Lincoln Lodging Association, and he's going to come talk to us.
Thank you. Morning. First off, I'd like to thank Marcy, who's a member of the Lincoln Lodge Association, because it's something that where the association itself, we meet once a month and we talk about things that are affecting our industry, and a lot of it's revenue related or event related, and she's really made it an effort to bring this issue to our group so that we can actually make a difference in something. And it's something to where hotels here in Lincoln, we face some of the same issues that other large markets have, but it's something where we're always worried about guest security, we're worried about people's information being stolen, we're worried about credit cards being handled appropriately, and I think it's something that we've probably not done our part on this issue. It's something to where we think we're here in Lincoln, Nebraska, a great city with low crime, low unemployment, a lot of great things going for it, and we just don't put that at the forefront. And so now with working with the coalition, we realize we get the statistics. We get to know that this is an issue here in Lincoln, and we get an opportunity because it's happening under our roof. So the places that we're spending hours upon hours every week, and this is happening, and I don't think that we're doing our due diligence, and so now we've got the ball in our court so that we can take this back to our hotels and train our staffs. But also it's something where all the hotels here, a lot of the hotels here in Lincoln are owned and operated by people here in Lincoln that have hotels in Omaha or in York, and maybe this is something we can help escalate to expand Nebraska and Iowa and make it be a little bit bigger of a program or the thinking of not just the small town or the Midwestern ideals, but to make it be something to where we actually are a great part of the success of eradicating this. And I think we're just it's real early yet, but from Kathy coming and speaking to the group, we've had people that are really getting interested in this, and that our hotels is signing up very shortly to get going on some training, And I know that it's just going to keep going from there, and we're very proud to be a part of this. So, thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think that one of the strengths of democracy is that it can bring large, powerful forces to bear on problems when it so chooses. And the question of whether it so chooses depends in large part on how you and the media communicate the problem to the masses and the public who affect public officials and all enforcement agencies in the state. So we hope you'll talk to your superiors and do your very best to be able to do a good story on this today. Questions?
I hear you guys, the senators, talk about victims and traffickers and buyers. What are you guys are doing to help with the victims? What programs are out there to protect the victim? Because if a child is put or sale 13 years old and she's discovered by 25, 27, all you know is prostitution. So what are we doing to ensure that they change their life?
Sister, is that a good question for you, or who would be the best to respond to that? Okay.
So statewide, the Salvation Army co-coordinates the task force with the Attorney General's office, and they are working with local programs across the state and local communities to ensure that we have the services ready to go. Locally here in Lincoln, we're really fortunate to have Voices for Hope and the Friendship Home, who does provide services to victims of sex trafficking. So right now, we need expanded and enhanced services, but there are safe places for victims to go all across our state. And so we just encourage victims to always be able to reach out to not only 911, but that human trafficking resource hotline at 888-3737-888.
Good to go? Okay, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
And thank you all.
Thank you. Appreciate it.